All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time your time zone is in. This is Kai Deering with On the Fly with Kai. Today is the 26th of August, 2021. And I'm excited. We always bring you tips, tricks, and hacks from entrepreneurs. And today I'm super excited because I'm going to bring to you one of my oldest, not that she's old, one of my oldest, dearest friends. I met her over 30 years ago. I can't believe it. THERESA Hayle with B.E.W. Productions. Welcome to the show, my friend, literally.
Hi. Hi, Kai. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, hey, I know we've had a long history, and I wrote in the little intro about this show that you and I met. Are you ready for this? I think I was 22 years old, so we're not going to really go into how much time ago that was. But in Eugene at Grateful Dead shows, we were both Deadheads, still are. I love it. And I love that you created a business based on your music passion. I just think that is fantastic because a lot of people toil away at stuff they don't like. They don't follow their passion. But I know when I met you, you were working at Grabber Screws.
You're
And
gonna go there, aren't
I
you?
got fired. You might have gotten laid off, but I got canned. You got fired. We never worked for any. I mean, I got fired. You got laid off. I got
Yeah.
fired, and we never ever worked for anyone else again. And so I know it was kind of a defining moment for us. We had so much fun discovering ourselves and figuring out what we wanted to do. How did you know you were going to do this, woman? I love to hear people's stories. I know, but tell the audience.
I mean, it's funny because I remember like many years ago, I remember Harmony and I were kind of, you know, whatever, hanging out and we were giggling and we're like, what do you know, like what do you want to do? And Harmony's like, I just want to draw and do art. And I was like, I just want to throw parties. I'm really good at throwing parties. And I kind of think that was the first time that I actually had this like bing light bulb go off and think, I actually do want to do that, and I can do that, and I'm probably be pretty good at it. So yeah, so
And true
I think
that.
that would
I
be
mean,
the very first moment that I realized this is something I want to do.
and I got to say, true that, because you've had huge high profile clients like High Sierra Music Festival, Facebook, Nike, Jerry Days in the Park. I mean, you have an interesting lineup of clients. So I love that you took your passion and made it a career. My question on that is, because now you're all word of mouth. So am I. Here we are, 20 plus years in our businesses. A lot of it's just word of mouth. How did you get to that point though, where you now clients come to you, right?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I work on teams with people that have those relationships. So it's just that the teams that I work with, like Taylor Street Production, which I absolutely love, I work with them quite a bit and have for many years. And part of their kind of core production team that has those relationships with Facebook and Nike and stuff like that. But High Sierra was a great story because I remember volunteering. Remember, we volunteered in the beer tent in like 1999, right? And I remember it was like maybe the next year that I called the office and I was like, hey, I want to come work with you guys. What can I do? And they're like, well, come in, let's talk. And went in and I chatted with them. And I, at the time, was starting working with the band Garage Mahal. And that sort of like was like, well, I could probably spearhead your street team. And that just organically happened. And the next thing I knew, I was working with High Sierra on a full-time basis for about 8 years. And doing their festivals, and now I've worked for them for 21 plus years. But
Wow.
so it all, like, honestly, everything happened very organically, but I also think it was at a time when things could happen organically still. It's the time that like you started your business and we kind of started our businesses at the same time. you know
For sure.
so yeah.
So you said some really important things there. You talked about, a couple things. One was, volunteering, right? So I think as a business owner, if you were going to get a tip and trick and hack here, work for free so you can
Yeah.
make those connections. And then you said another great thing, which I think people forget about, is collaboration. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be all about you. It's not, a scarcity mentality. It's abundance, right? There's room for everybody. Do you want to comment any more on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, and I've had people for many years now say, Teresa, I want to do what you do. How do I do it? And I'm just saying, you know what? Get involved, start volunteering. The rock stars are going to get, cherry picked out, and they're going to get the gigs as this like opportunities arise. They're going to say, you know what? I have this really amazing volunteer, and I want to, recommend them for this position. Or sometimes I have jobs that I can offer people. And I always look at the people that are not afraid to put in the work. And so, it kind of goes back to, the doing events is not an easy job. It's hours and hours on your feet. A 12-hour day is a short day for me on a regular basis, right? So if you can't put in a 12-hour day on your feet, you should not be doing it. But those who can are the ones who are the rock stars, and the ones who will actually, grow and be successful in this business too. So don't be afraid of hard work, and be a yes, I can kind of person, and work well with your team, and you'll do great.
I love it. I think entrepreneurs, it's funny, like we work without getting paid so that later we can get paid more than we're worth.
Yeah.
How that works out.
Yeah.
I love it too, because you are in a very industry that was hit really hard in the last crazy, what do they call it? The great pause. And during the great pause,
this thing called COVID.
Right? I don't even like saying the word, but during the great pause that's still starting to plague us now. So number one, you had to pivot, like it was like water on, water off, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of companies in your profession didn't make it. Number two, we're facing kind of an interesting potential second wave. So you're pivoting again, even right now as we speak.
Yeah.
Talk to the people about, just because it works one way doesn't mean it's going to work that same way all the time, and being nimble and not being afraid to make changes. I'd love for you to speak to that.
So yeah, I had a repeat client last year that the previous year I did this wonderful, wonderful event for them, and it was just gorgeous with lots of, interactive things going on, and everybody was, was very, well attended. And then last year, as we kind of started planning, we were starting to plan in that direction, and then quickly realized, like, oh no, the world is shutting down. And, it was with the congregation that feels very strongly about having their community together, and it was interesting because the question was asked, how can we give this to our community, but from afar, and that's when I started doing virtual events, and I found an amazing team of people that worked with me, Dan Friedman and Michael Wilson, who I am indebted to their talents. And with my organization, we actually pulled off, recording 12 services, and the guys did all the editing of the sound and the video, and it turned out to be really incredibly amazing. And so sometimes you think you're going down a certain path, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, uh-oh, I can't do this. And this actually happened to me this week, where I've been planning for that similar event to now be back in person, and then all of a sudden last week it was like, oh my goodness, we can't be indoors. We just cannot. And so we've been spending the last week working on street closure permits and sound permits and all the things you need to then make that happen. And there's a lot of moving parts to make that happen as well. So you've got to learn how to pivot on the fly, Kai.
On the fly with Guy. And that's kind of why I have the name of this, because if I had to think about this, I probably wouldn't have the time to pull this off. So I just like coming on here and just going for it. And I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people just like, you want me on your zombie apocalypse team, because when stuff like that happens, like I just get into action. How can we make it work? And you're exactly the same way. So what can we do? You didn't crumble. You didn't fold. Sometimes we cry, but you know what I mean? We didn't just like, okay, let's just quit, call it quits. So I love Love that about you. And I do a lot of events, right? Because in my business, they want us to do trainings and meet people. So we had to really pivot too. And we went to March 13th, Friday the 13th. The next day I had an event for 150 people in person, pulled the plug on that, went online, never done something like that big. We had over 250 people online the next day. I was like, wow, we're on to something, just like you. Like,
Nice.
it was a blessing, right? Like you found out, wow, we can do things, and the reach was incredible. So
Great.
people like me, I'm doing an outdoor event on September 11th. I don't know why I picked that date, but so I say that to say at some point, though, it doesn't make sense to be, I guess you could, if you're a doctor, you could take out your own appendix if the mirrors were in the right place. But at some point, it doesn't make sense. At what point do people say, Uncle, I need to hire somebody for this? I'm in over my head.
It depends on, the person and the background. I think that people, when they start to realize that it's absorbing every moment of their day, and then all of a sudden their job is now being the event planner and not being the executive director or being the office manager or whatever, they're like, wait a minute, I need some help. Because I don't think people really realize how much it takes to pull off an event. There's hours and hours of work to do it. 90% of the work into pulling off an event happens prior to that event. And so if you're putting on an event that might be a 6-hour event, it probably took 60 to 70 hours prior to that 6-hour event to actually be able to pull it off. So, yeah.
It's so true. And for those of you who are watching live, you're welcome to put questions. We can actually see them in the chat. So speaking of, I agree. So I'm doing this little event. There's gonna be 50 people, but now I got to find the coffee truck because we don't want to do it. Now I got to make sure we got enough chairs. And like I just said, will the screen, will you be able to see it outside? I don't know. Am I going to be able to broadcast it in simultaneous? So, at some point, that's not your wheelhouse, right? But you got to be super organized. So let's talk about that for a second, because for me, when I do events, and they're way smaller scale, right? I'm just so anal, it drives me bananas. And at what point does being so particular become a hindrance? And give us some ideas on how to stay organized, just if we're even just organizing a little party for our family for 10 people.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to let it go. I'm highly organized and to a fault at times, because everything has to be in its place. And sometimes people I work with are like, "Oh, T, just it's gonna work out." And I'm like, "No, we have to make sure that this is all lined up." So. I use a lot of grids, and Google Docs is great because you can share documents with people. I used to do a lot of things in the Microsoft suites, but Google Docs has become a pretty user-friendly platform for a lot of people to share documents and work with. And then it's just a matter of having your toolbox and your event toolbox. And what I mean by that is all your basic supplies already organized for whatever event happens. So say all of a sudden you got to go do an event, you can grab your event toolbox and you're good to go for the most part. But you have your general stuff. And then when I say toolbox, I also mean everything that you need to have to pull off an event, and whether that's your supplies, your people, your organization. It's kind of it's all in one. It's all encompassed.
I love it. Well, my good friend Matt has a question that I have as well. Hi, Matt. And I work with a lot of volunteers, and I know you do too. So they're getting into the show for free, or maybe they just do it because they want to. His question is, how do you motivate a team to do all the hard work it takes to pull off an event? Same thing here. I'm relying on volunteers to help us for that September 11th. How do you motivate them? That's a great question. You got teams of kids and punks.
Everything I want to say right now, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I alcohol really gets you far. I'm just kidding. I'm a cheerleader, and I'm one of those people that I think honestly my personality sort of is a motivating personality. I do remind people of like how good it feels when you pull something off, and the success, we do a lot of fundraisers. That is a really good feeling when you raise money for a fire department, like my local fire department, when I was, have been doing their galas in the evenings and once a year. It's such a great feeling. And so when you're giving back to the community, I think people resonate from that. So I also think that motivates people. So you also have to realize, know your audience, right? So, it's hard to find just people have to be motivated by what is my reward. So if I'm working a music festival, their reward is that they get to volunteer for me, and then they are rewarded by being able to go to that music festival. If it's someone in my community and we're putting on a fire department event, they're rewarded because they know that they're supporting their local fire department. So people do want to be rewarded, but also I just try to also remind people how thankful I am for their work, and I show my appreciation in a lot of ways, and my staff can probably attest to that. I try really hard to give little thank you gifts if I can do that, and just show appreciation in whatever possible way I can.
So give us some examples. So what are some great little thank you gifts that you can do that aren't like if you're on a budget that, your staff really likes or your volunteers really like? And I do know that people will work for beer because I work for you and volunteer, and that's how I get paid.
I'll give you a great example. I just closed my Music from the Vines project, my music series that happened, and did 5 concerts in Little Vineyards Family Winery here in Glen Ellen.
Awesome.
And it was great. You came to one, which I appreciate. And, at the end, I wanted to give something to my team to just show my appreciation. And I basically did gift bags, really nice, reusable wine bags. And I bought wine from the winery and I put wine openers in it. And it was and I put a thank you card. And actually took the time, which is, a lost talent, to and you're really good at this, Kai. Actually, I think of you when I write these thank you cards because you always write your thank you cards. But I took the time to really think about each one of my staff, and I wrote them all an individual and very personal thank you card. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, Matt said, thank you. Very helpful. I know, Theresa, it's so funny because I work the post office. I did this training one time and there must have been 150 people in the room. And I said, if you've ever gotten a piece of mail from me, raise your hand. And half the room raised their hand. I love it. People love that stuff, right? And
it still goes a long way. Don't forget to write your thank you cards, these are important things.
Keeps you connected. And it's so funny because being the cheerleader is really important because I work with a volunteer army as well. And I'll never forget one day I was on the phone. My mom was in the car with me and she was like, you're a 6-figure paid cheerleader. And I started laughing. I was like, yeah, kind of. So funny.
Yeah.
So I know you, so it's fun. We talked about, I didn't know you had hired a business coach, and I have mentors. I read all the time. I listen to stuff. I mean, I am constantly working on myself. When did you know to hire a business coach? When should somebody hire a business coach? And how do you find one? I mean, there are a lot of questions. What made you hire one first? And then how did you find one?
I have a lot of mentors in the industry and a lot of people I look up to and I talk to and I bounce ideas off of. And one of my good friends, Jenna Leibowitz, who's band manager and another event planner extraordinaire. And her and I were chatting and one day, and it was a few months back, maybe 6 months ago. And, we're going back to this pivoting during COVID and trying to reinvent ourselves. And what do we do? And yada, yada. And Jenna was like, you should reach out to Aaron Gadiel. He's a business coach. And I was like, what? I know Aaron. I didn't know he was a business coach. So it was really great that it was someone I knew. And I set up a call with him. We did a couple of sessions, and it was so like such a relief. And I got to thinking about things in a totally different way. Um, Things that he just talked to me about. A lot of it was just, it's almost like having a business therapist, to be honest, but he has been great. And I think I've had like 4 or 5 sessions with him at this point. Super busy, crazy day yesterday. And I so wanted to cancel my coaching session with him. And then I thought, this is the one thing you're doing for yourself. And this is an important thing. And so I kept it and I had my session and it was great. And so, yeah, I think I never realized I needed a business coach. Like I never really thought about it. Never crossed my mind. But now that I have one, I can't even imagine moving forward with my business without having one.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so, yeah, I think, I'm sure that they're out there, but I'm happy to share Aaron's contact information. He's a fantastic coach. He's really good listener.
And you said you were also wanted to mention, I know you don't remember who did it, but we talked about a podcast that you really like that maybe I'll put in the chat for everybody.
Oh yeah. So this came from Aaron Gadiel and as well. It was The Big Leap. It's a podcast. So it's a book actually. I'm a horrible reader. I love books on tape. I love like my audio books. And in the morning, if I'm go to the gym, I have a drive and I listen to the audio book both ways, which is great. Well, he said, why don't you check out The Big Leap? And so they don't have that book on audio, unfortunately, but I found this podcast and it was something like 14 sessions. And it's great to listen to. There's a guy named Gay Henricks who puts it on. And it was every different podcast has a different like topic that they're covering. But it's been eye-opening. So, yeah.
So I know that hiring a coach now you couldn't see being without one. You may have done it sooner. So if you were to now look back on your 20-year career, with the great pause and all the other stuff that's happened, and you were going to go back 20 years ago and give advice to your 20-year previous self, what would you do and what would you say to yourself to go back then?
Oh my gosh. I think just I'm already a pretty tenacious person, but I think don't undermine yourself. Don't be afraid. Don't doubt yourself, because I think the only thing that slows us down and stops us from moving forward is self-doubt. And if you just go for it, it usually works out pretty good. I find that most decisions we do in life are good decisions. So yeah, no self-doubt, move forward, make it happen, which I did. But I think that I would have probably made things happen even more quickly had I had the confidence back then that I do now.
I agree. I think it's fun to be our age now because we just don't care. I'm like, I just kind of don't care anymore. But I did care back then. And, I ended up going in a network marketing company, which of course people made fun of me for that. And I was like, I love what I do. So there you go. So very interesting. I also want to ask you one question, because I'm reminded at the very beginning when you said, when you first started, you did it very organically because you could back then. Does that mean because now it's social media? Is that, what were you alluding to? I kind of forgot to ask you that. Sorry.
I feel like, I don't know if jobs would be that easy to come by. Although this big pause that we're having, I can tell you that staffing is very hard to come by for events. We know this in the restaurant industry. We know this everywhere, right? So if ever there was a time that you wanted to make a career change, this is the time, I really think, because I think that there's a lot of open doors. And it's just a matter of getting your foot in. And once you get your foot in, you're and you're a hard worker, you're good to go. So this is actually a really good time. When we were younger, I think that, yeah, I think that jobs weren't as easy to come by because we didn't have social media and the internet. You know, when I think about 20 years ago, like the internet, it had just it was still in, I don't even want to go there, but it was still, there was no smartphones back then. That's for
Right?
sure.
Our smartphone at a Grateful Dead show, if we got separated, was okay, every half an hour on the half an hour, meet at the flagpole. I mean, like,
Yeah, yeah.
that was our
For
beacon.
Jerry's
So
picture.
I don't know how we did it without phones. That's so funny. Well, I
Yeah.
agree. And I'm going to put a quick plug in for myself. I need an admin. This is the first time in my 20-year career that I haven't had a personal assistant like 5-10 hours a week. And I can't find anybody. You're right. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to pay like 19-20 bucks an hour for crying out loud, W-2'd employee. And I'm having a heck of a time. So I agree. If you ever wanted to, like you said, work for a certain profession to see if that was something that you wanted to pursue, right? Go in at the entry level, and get it done. So I really, really, really appreciate that. I'm sure. So KK, I'm hiring a sales and business development. I know you are, young lady. And if you get one, I'm stealing your lady. No, I'm just kidding. That's my good friend KK. Both of us are complaining we can't find anybody to work for us. I love it.
Yeah.
So in closing, I know you have built a tremendously big business in a very crowded space. You've survived the great pause. You've done just amazing. I'm so incredibly proud of you, from Jerry days to Beta Breakers. I mean, like, you are just a baller in your space. Like, you are top dog, #1 in Northern California for sure. And you've just done so well for yourself. I'm so proud to know you. For 30 years, I've known you. You've been one of my best friends forever. How would people engage with you if they just want to pick your brain on a couple things, maybe collaborate, maybe hire you? What would be the best way for them to connect with you, my friend?
Yeah, just on my website has everything. Just go to bewproductions.net, and you can reach me through that. I have a connection page, and my Music from the Vines series is on there. My virtual events are on there. My background a little bit. We're all also still trying to be as environmentally thoughtful with our and have events that are zero waste, things like that. So there's all kinds of great information on the on that website, and yeah, that's how you can find me.
Fun. All those things I hadn't thought about, right? Like, oh, wow. That's really great. So congratulations to you and all your success. I appreciate you being on the phone, Theresa, or on the Zoom. With that, everybody, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. It was another great episode of On the Fly with Kai. We meet here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, all time zones in between. And what I try to bring to you is just my tribe, right? Because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, that are looking for tips, tricks, and hacks on how to take their business to the next level or make a leap into entrepreneurialism. And I'm hoping that these little interview series with people that have already done the do, like Theresa Hayle, sorry, that's her old name, right? 20 years, sorry, T. But so we try to bring to you these people so you can take some time off your learning curve, that you can get some great little 1%er that will take your business or take your, your journey to the next level. So I want to thank you again, Theresa, for being on the show with B.E.W. Productions. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great one. We'll see you guys next Thursday.